Hey guys, welcome to this session on building CRUD application with Node.js, Express.js, and MongoDB by Intellipaat. In this session, we'll be taking a look at how to use Express.js and MongoDB to build a CRUD API and use a React.js based front end to interact with it. So we've got a lot of good content for you to skim through, and you can take a look at all of this, and hopefully this will be beneficial for you. So without further ado, let's get started. But before we do click on the subscribe button and on the bell icon to never miss another update. And if you have any questions, please do ask in the question box or in the chat box, and we'll be more than happy to help you out there. So let's take a look at the agenda for the session. We'll begin by understanding what is Express.js. So we'll be starting from the bare basics. Then we'll understand why should you use Express.js, what are the advantages of using Express.js. We'll move on to understanding what is MongoDB, why would you want to use MongoDB as your database service. Then we'll take a look at Mongoose. We'll take a look at why should you use Mongoose, and then we'll have the demo in which we'll be building a really simple API and connect the front end and the back end together. So what is Express.js? Express.js is a web application development framework based on Node.js. It's a micro framework, so there are a lot of things that it does not do. It just performs the bare minimum tasks for you to be able to parse the request, get the data, and do a lot of other things. For other things like database handling and data model validation and a lot of other tasks that a typical web application might need to perform, you can either write the logic yourself, or you could use some other libraries that are available on the npm package repository, and you can take a look at all of that. So if you are trying to build an application with minimal interference from the libraries and frameworks that you use, Express.js is a really good choice there. So why would you want to use Express.js? Well, Express.js provides several benefits. Firstly, it's very fast. Since it's a small micro framework, it does not slow your application down. It's quite small in code base. You can just use it and run anything that you want to run with it. It's very minimal, so Express.js only provides the basic fundamental building blocks that you can use instead of you having to write them on your own, and the rest of it is being done by yourself. So you can do it however you wish to do. It's very minimal. It doesn't affect the way doesn't affect the size of your application when you add it to your application. It's unopinionated, so which means that Express.js does not have any default configurations that you need to override. You can set everything up as per your liking, as per your tastes. So if you don't like the way a particular database system is working, you can change it yourself. There are many things that you can do by yourself. You can do your own configuration management system by yourself, and Express.js just wouldn't care about that. It'll work perfectly fine. You will just have to configure it to be able to work with that. It's very simple. Express.js is by far one of the most simple ways of building web applications, mainly because firstly Node.js is very simple since it uses JavaScript, and Express.js is very simple as well, mainly because Express.js is very unopinionated and minimal, and it's very unobtrusive. It does not stampede on the way you like to work. If you want to put everything in a single file, and everything including from the routes to the validation to the database management, everything can be put into a single file for a small application. And for a large application, you can break things down into individual components that you like to work with. So you can take a look at that. Then comes MongoDB. MongoDB is the essential part of our web application, that is the database part. MongoDB is a document-oriented NoSQL database management system. So what it basically means is that you get to store your data in the format of JSON, and you can create your own schemas. There's no need for you to create databases that conform to a particular schema. That's one of the advantages of NoSQL databases. NoSQL databases scale really well. So after you reach a particular scale, NoSQL databases could really help you manage the complexity of the data and the interaction between those data points. So MongoDB is quite good with that. MongoDB is by far one of the most popular NoSQL databases that are out there. And with that in mind, let's take a look at the next thing. Let's take a look at why you should use MongoDB. Now, MongoDB is not the only NoSQL database out there. There are plenty of them. And depending on your use case, you can take a look at them. Maybe some kind of problem is better solved by some other database, but MongoDB does have several advantages that you can take a look at. Firstly, it's very fast. So if you're trying to build a web application and you need a database that can keep up with the amounts of requests and response per second, then MongoDB is quite good. It's really fast. It's used by one of the most traffic inspiring databases websites as their backend database. It's very flexible. It's schema less. So if you don't want to provide any schemas, you don't want to create any data model, any interaction between the data models that you have, it's completely fine. There's no need for you to do that. It will work just fine. Since the databases are denormalized and are document based, there are no need for you to perform complicated joins, which is one of the drawbacks of the SQL databases. Once the databases get into the third normal form, you have lots and lots of tables, and if you want to get some data out of that is related across multiple tables, then you have to do a lot of complicated joins, which could also be really difficult and could really be detrimental for the performance of your web application. So MongoDB takes care of that for you. It's very easy to use. MongoDB uses a query language that is very similar to JavaScript. So if you've used JavaScript, if you've used JavaScript's object-oriented functionalities, then MongoDB is going to be very easy for you to understand. This is why it's really easy to use in a mean stack, which is MongoDB, Angular, Express, and Node.js. And it's very scalable. So once you run out of the space in your database's disk, database server's disk, then what you can do is you can create multiple database copies and create a load balancer right in front of it, and the configuration is very easy. Or you can add more memory to your database server, and MongoDB integrates with all of these options very easily. So you don't have to perform a lot of crazy complicated configurations in order to get this to work. Now comes Mongoose. So for those of you who are unaware what Mongoose is, let's take a look at that. Mongoose is an ODM. So if you work with any other programming language, you come across things like ORM, which stands for Object Relational Mapper. Now here we are document based. So the object data mapper is the thing that we are using to map our JavaScript objects to our database. So essentially, you don't have to write any specialized query for interacting with your database. Those queries will be created, dispatched, and taken care of by Mongoose library. All you have to do is you have to define how the shape of your data looks like, what you want to do. Either you want to save, update, delete, or whatever you want to do. And the database interaction will be taken care of by Mongoose by performing the most efficient approach of performing the task that you have asked it to perform, and it will do everything for you behind the scene, ranging from defining the schema to creating a model to interacting with the database. Everything is taken care of by Mongoose. So why use Mongoose? Well, Mongoose provides several benefits. So Mongoose is very fast. If you're trying to create a new database and you want to connect to the database, there could be several configuration steps involved, and Mongoose takes care of that for you. It contains the option of schemas, so it doesn't enforce you to use schemas, but if you want to use schemas, then you can define the kind of data that you are expecting to have. You can explain to Mongoose that some of the data is required but other is optional, and you can perform a lot of mix and matching of the rules so that you can get the schema that is best suited for your needs. Since schemas are there, it performs validation as well. Validation ranging from things like whether something matches a particular pattern, which is especially useful in case of validating emails, to things like whether or not particular data is in the correct format, i.e. it's a number, it's a floating point number, or a whole number, it's a string. If it's a string, then how long is it, and many other kinds of validations. Then comes utilities. Mongoose comes with a lot of built-in methods that allow you to run custom code successfully post execution or during the execution. So you can perform these highly complicated tasks right after the execution of the query, and if you want to add certain field to data or manipulate the shape of the data that is being returned by the database, you can do it inside the Mongoose utilities. Then comes the reduced effort. Since Mongoose takes care of a lot of the boilerplate code for you, you don't have to worry about how things are getting done. They can be getting done the way they are, and you don't need to worry about the internal nitty-gritties of what are the database queries that are being dispatched and how things are working underneath the hood. All of this is taken care of for you. Then comes hands-on. So let's go to our hands-on. I'd first like to show you what exactly we're working with. We'll be creating a to-do list API in which we'll be able to submit some to-dos and we'll be able to get some to-dos. So to do that, I have broken up our application to several small pieces. First, the index.js, which is the web server configuration, where we define the routes, define the controllers, and we define how things are working. So let's start from the beginning. Let me just close this up. I create an Express. I import or require the Express module. I have installed all of this before, so let me just show you. I open the package.json. So I have Express.js installed, I have Mongoose installed as dependencies. These mean that my application is going to be using these packages. They have been created by other people, so I've just installed them. And I have created a development dependency on NodeMon. Basically, it will restart my application server whenever I make changes to the code. It's very easy to configure, and it allows us to speed up our development. And finally, I've created a dev script which basically says, okay, whenever I run the dev script, use NodeMon to run my app.js file, which is what I've just created. Now, what will happen is, or you could do a lot of other things as well. Instead of app.js, you could also run index.js, and that will work just fine. Now, in our index.js file, what we have is I have imported Express. I have created an Express app. Don't worry about these things. I'll explain what these are. This is what we'll be using to interact with our database. This is what's going to be using Mongoose. And this is what's going to be using the repositories to perform the actions that we want to perform. And I'll explain why I have broken this up into this in a moment. Then we tell the Express.js framework that, okay, I will be expecting some JSON data, mainly because we'll be creating a React front end. So that's why it's working. And the front end is going to be super uncomplicated. So if you don't know React, it's going to be super simple for you. I'll explain about things are happening right in a moment. And we tell it to know that there is a static file directory, which is called static, in which I am hosting my index.html. I could host other files there as well. Now what happens is we define the get route for to-dos. What happens is that it will create a response which is of the status code 200, which means everything went perfectly fine. And we will call the get all to-dos method. And we will pass in the to-do repository. So let's take a look at these one by one. Firstly, let's take a look at get all to-dos. And it's doing nothing more than just calling the get all to-dos method from my repository. Now, the great thing about this is that I don't have to define what repository I'm using, mainly because now it doesn't matter. If I was using an in-memory repository instead of Node.js, or if I was using DynamoDB, MySQL, I could just pass in the in-memory repository. It should just have that function and it should return the right answer. That's all it needs to happen. No further configuration is needed. Now, to go to the to-do repository, I go to the repositories field, and inside the repositories field, what I have to do is I have created the index.js. This is what's connecting to my database. So basically, I just tell it to, when you reach on an error, log it to the console. If you get disconnected, connect again. And now what I do is I create a MongoDB instance. My locally hosted MongoDB server is going to be hosting this instance, and I have a to-dos collection in which I will be storing my documents. So in the to-dos collection, I will keep alive the connection, which means don't kill off the connection instantly after I've made the first request, or it's idle for a few seconds. And these are just some configuration. Now what we do is we are exposing the to-do gateway. And what it does is that firstly, it imports the to-do model. Let me explain what the to-do model does. This is where we define the schema. Description is going to be string, done is going to be boolean, it's going to be either true or false. And we have the to-do model, which is basically the schema, it is basically a model that will convert the data that we send into the data that is stored inside our database, and will compare it against the schema that we have made. Now we expose that model, we send it back, we go back, here we are, and we have the to-do model. We create two functions, get all to-dos and save to-dos. Basically what I tell it is that, okay, find all the to-dos and then return the data. If you run into an error, then just log it to the console. There are better ways of dealing with this. You could either save it to the database and notify some person by sending them an email, and all of this is usable, but right now we don't want to complicate things. Secondly, what we do is we get the description and we get the done option, and what we do is we create a new to-do model and we save it. If we get into an error, we print the error, otherwise we just return the answer. So this is being called by get all to-dos. It calls the get all to-dos method, which connects to the database, gets all the to-dos, returns it back. This function is doing the same thing. It's basically a proxy. So it returns everything and we get it through our database. It's a get request, as you can see. So if I open Postman, and I'll open a new tab so that you could see, I will create a get request for HTTP / to-dos, send. It's sending the request, and as you can see, connection refused. Oh, because I am not running my application right now. Sorry about that. So I will open the integrated terminal here. It opens up here, and now all I have to do is type npm run dev. Press enter. It'll take some time, but it'll open up. So it runs, and as you can see, nodemon is starting to run here. Now it's printing working because I have defined the port to be 8000, and when it gets connected, it can print out working. So it's working fine. Now if I do this, I had already saved some data into it. So as you can see, this is the data that I had already saved just to check whether or not it's working. It's working completely fine. But now let's say how it's storing the data. So I'll just hide the terminal. It's still running in the background. Now I'm using a post request. Post request is used to store data. So we send along some data in the request to be stored into our database. We send the request to our save to do function. So we go to the save to do function, which is here, and again it's doing the same thing using the repository. I will just open it up. Uses the repository, gets the data, and basically sends the data to the repository save to do function, and it will return the response. So again, not complicated at all, but if we had some other complications like validating the data or printing something out, saving it to the database, sending an email, all of those tasks, we can just pass in the methods that are going to do that, and our use cases will orchestrate that for us. Now, with that in mind, we use the save to do method. So let's take a look at the save to do method that is being used in the repository. We go to the repositories. This is what it looks like. Inside our to do repository, in the to do gateway, we have a save to do method. All it does is that it gets the description and done and passes it to the to do model, and we save it. Once we save it, we return back the newly created model, and it works just fine. So to show you how it's working, what we're doing here is this. We are calling postman. Inside postman, I have already created a post request. Here it is. Now, since it's going to be a JSON response, I go to the body. I tell it, okay, this is going to be React.js, learn React.js, and done is going to be false. So this is the JSON data that I'm sending. I am expecting a response of the data that has been created, and as you can see, let me just expand it for you. This is the data that I've gotten. So I've created 2 of these, right? And they are working just fine. Now let's see if I can work it out. So I have created something of a front end using React. It's very simple. So I'll just show you. Firstly, I'll open the localhost 8000. So it runs everything and it gets the data from there. Let me just show you. I open the console. I go to the elements tab. As you can see, I have written the React code here, and I'll just show you in a moment in my text page. But it basically React is getting the data back from the server and then setting it into my application. So if I were to just close all of this off, yeah, and open index.html, this is what it looks like. Let it load. This is what it looks like. I have created the basic HTML skeleton, imported 3 React application packages. These are React Development, React DOM, and the JSX compiler. Don't need to worry about that. Then I have created a root node in which my application is going to be created. I write the script. Basically, I create a to-do list that is a React component. I ask React to create a state. State basically is the variable that React will take a look at, and when anything changes in that state, that will be automatically re-rendered, or everything inside it will be re-rendered. So what happens here is that we use the React use effect hook. These are the new features in React, so don't worry about that. I basically call the fetch operation here. Then I convert it into JSON, basically the same thing that I did before. I call this function, parse the JSON, then set to do's. And once the to-dos are set, our function that is rendering it out is going to re-render. It re-renders everything and we get the data that we want. We render it to the DOM and we get exactly what we need. So as you can see, it's quite easy to do that. You don't have to worry about how things are getting done. As you can see, two of the things that we had built are built here and are being shown here. Now let's see how you can learn these things. So whenever I'm trying to learn new things, the quote that always comes to my mind is that an investment in knowledge always pays the best interest. With that in mind, if you have any questions ever, you can take a look at the YouTube 30 coupon code and we'll show you how things are done. We'll give you 30% of the coupon code discount on any course that you want to take a look at. So now let's take a look at some of the resources that you can use to learn new things. So in case you want to learn anything, you can go to our intellipaat.com/academy website. We have a lot of free courses there for you. They are completely free for you to enroll, ranging from AWS, DevOps, C, Java, data structures, Python, data science, and many other things. And you can take a look at all the companies that are hiring from Intellipaat. You can learn a lot using these free courses. You can get a good sound foundational knowledge about this. Then if you want to learn really deep knowledge about Node.js, then you can use our Node.js certification course. We teach you a lot of things ranging from Node.js, asynchronous programming, file systems, streams, Express.js, MongoDB testing, REST API, microservices, and a lot of other things as well. This is the certificate that you'll be getting. Certificates are highly important when you're trying to learn new things. And you can take a look at the reviews our courses have got. This is one of our most well-reviewed courses, and if you have any questions, you can ask it here. So if you have any questions regarding any other technology that you are stuck into, you can take a look at our intellipaat.com/community website, where you can post the question that you want to get an answer to, and you'll get the answer to that question. Then you can take a look at our blogs, where there's a lot of free content for you to go through. You can take a look at the new technologies that are being taught there. You can take a look at a lot of the other things that you want to learn. And blogs are a great way to expand your knowledge if you're more of a reading person. If you're not more of a reading person and you're more of a video person, then you can take a look at our YouTube channel. It's in youtube.com. You can go to youtube.com, search for Intellipaat's channel and take a look at that. You can subscribe to get new notifications, and you can take a look at a lot of the free content that we're providing there. So with that in mind, you already know the coupon code. I hope you use it. You get 30% off without any questions. And if you have any other questions that have not been answered in the FAQ section or on the community side, you can contact our course advisors. They're there for you to chat with 24/7. You can take a look at the numbers on the screen so you can learn more about that. And we have our email as well. So if you have questions that you want answered, but you are not more of a call person, then you can take a look at the email that is being listed on your screen and you can contact us there. We are available 24/7. So if you have any question anytime, you can ask us there as well. With that in mind, hopefully this has been helpful to you. Thank you so much, and I'll see you in the next one.